Once again, a very good evening, everyone. I, Neha Arora Chawla, on behalf of Geeta Ratan International Business School, take this opportunity to welcome you all on the virtual platform for Management Development Program on Finance and Accounting for Business Managers. Geeta Ratan International Business School was established in the year 2004. It is affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, Delhi, and is approved by All India Council for Technical Education, Ministry of HRD, Government of India for technical courses, and Bar Council of India for law courses. Financial management is an important skill of every small business owner or manager, as every decision that an owner makes has a financial impact on the company. Therefore, he has to make these decisions within the total context of the company's operations. To talk on such nuances of finance and accounting, I would like to invite Dr. Pooja Chaturvedi Sharma. She is an assistant professor at Geeta Ratan International Business School. Ma'am did her graduation from Delhi University and completed her master's degree in business administration from Bharati Vidyapeeth deemed University, New Delhi. She is also UGC NET JRF qualified and has completed her PhD in finance from Bharati Vidyapeeth deemed University, New Delhi itself. She is a lifetime member of All India Commerce Association and is also an active reviewer in UGC approved journals. She has been awarded Young Research Scholar Award under Saimuddin Memorial ICA Research Scholar Award at All India Commerce Association Conference. Dr. Sharma's research interests are focused on sustainable finance, behavioral finance, mutual funds, and stock investing. We welcome you, ma'am. Ma'am, I would request you to please begin with the session.
Thank you, Ms. Neha. We genuinely welcome everyone who have joined us for this session, and thank you for the patience which you have shown. So I will not take much time, and I will directly start with the session. Neha ma'am, I just need a confirmation. Is the PPT visible?
Ma'am, not yet. Have you shared?
Okay. Am I audible to everyone? I hope I am. So we will be starting directly without wasting any more time. So in this session, we will be having a look at the most important financial statements, namely balance sheet, income statement, cash flow statement, and then we will be understanding their interrelationships. When we talk about business survival, two major concepts come in the view. One is profitability, and the other one is solvency. Profitability basically tells us about the revenues which are generated by the company, and solvency basically tells us about how long the company is going to stay, how the company is meeting its financial obligations. Financial statements. Finance has a unique position to drive transformation initiatives that benefit the entire organization. The right platform gives finance the ability to react faster to the ever changing business landscapes, along with empowering the team to make better decisions, mitigate risk, and optimize performance. So, be it a Fortune 500 company, a startup, or a non-profit making organization, having a solid understanding of financial accounting principles is essential for making critical business decisions. So, we need to discover what's behind the numbers in financial statements. Financial statement analysis is simply a collective name for the tools and techniques that are intended to provide relevant information to the decision makers. Financial statement analysis consists of the comparisons for the same company over the period of time and comparisons of different companies either in the same industry or in different industries. Well, the god of investing, Warren Buffett, himself said that unless you are willing to put in the effort to learn accounting, how to read and interpret financial statements, you really shouldn't select stocks yourself. Well, we all are finance people and we all like investing funds. So we need to do and we would like to do that ourselves. So before starting investing, we need to understand the financial statements. Why? Because we need to understand the financial statements, because financial statements are merely a document. These are simple numbers which doesn't have any meaning unless we relate them with something even more meaningful. Right? They will be simple tables having no meaning unless we interpret them with reference to other things surrounding the organization or the economy of country. As in a financial statement analysis helps the investors and creditors to evaluate the past performance and the company's financial position. As well, it also helps the company to predict the future performance. Well, there are various standards of comparisons. First would be the financial ratios. Financial ratios are basically taken up through time series analysis when you take various financial ratios over a period of time. Next is competitors ratios. Competitors ratios are basically taken up through cross sectional analysis. Cross sectional analysis is basically when you take, for a particular time period, you are comparing the current ratio of all the companies in a particular industry. For a particular year, you are taking the debt equity ratio of all the competitors in the industry. Industry standards are taken through industry analysis, and projected ratios are basically taken up through performer analysis. These are various different segments, and some of them would be taken up in the next session by a next resource person. The kind of information which we need for financial statement analysis can be collected through various sources, namely company records, which have directors report, financial statements, schedules and notes to the financial statements, auditors reports, and along with that there are stock exchanges which provide us financial statements, business periodicals, information services like CRISIL, ICRA and CMIE. Financial statements are basically of two types. Basically, one would be on the basis of material used, and one would be on the basis of modus operandi. Modus operandi means the method of working. When we talk about the first category, on the basis of material used, one would be external analysis and the other would be internal analysis. External analysis would be done by the people outside the organization, and they will be basically analyzing a company on the basis of published reports. And whereas internal analysis talks about the people who are internal to the company, who have access to the internal accounts of the company, internal records of the company, and on the basis of those records they make the analysis. On the basis of material used, it can be horizontal, it can be vertical. Today in this session, the kind of statements which I am going to show you, whether it's balance sheet or income statement, they are all horizontal. Why? Because horizontal setup of financial statements helps you to compare the things, helps you to compare data year on year in one go. Because in horizontal statements you show things in multiple years with one standard base year, right? Whereas in vertical statements, it is a statement which shows quantitative relationships among various items in statements on a particular date. It is used for inter-firm comparisons or inter-department comparisons. Various types of statements which we are going to study today is our income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement, and equity, because equity is a very important part of balance sheet. We will be talking firstly about the balance sheet. We all know balance sheet has two segments, liabilities and assets. And because we always know that both the sides of balance sheets have to be equal. Assets equals to liability. Why? Reason being that whenever you are receiving some funds, you need to validate their use. Vice versa, when you are using some funds, when company is using some funds, you need to validate the source from which you receive those funds, so that there is nothing hidden. Things need to be transparent, your documents, your statements need to be transparent, so that the potential investors, so that all the interested parties can see, understand, and decide about the kind of investment perspectives they see in your company. So this is the reason why both the sides of balance sheets are equal, and they must be equal. Liabilities are of two types: shareholders funds and liabilities. See, this is the balance sheet of a company. We cannot disclose the name right now. So, this is a horizontal presentation of the balance sheet where we can see the data for 5 years. First of all, we see shareholders' funds. Shareholders' funds are the equity share capital. These are the funds of the equity owners of the company. We know company gets funding through two modes: either it is debt financing or it is equity financing. So why equity funds are a liability? It is very simple. Equity owners are the equity shareholders are the owners of the company. They have invested their funds in the company, against which they expect some return. So when you need to give some return to the owners, although it is not obligatory, although it is not something which needs to be paid regularly to the to the equity shareholders, but yes, it is a liability. You need to pay back to them. Why? Because they trusted you, they invested their funds in your company, and they are the ones who are going to stay with the company even at the time of liquidation, right? So considering all these logics, shareholders funds are considered as liability. Next, in liabilities are reserves and surplus. Reserves and surplus basically comprises of share premium, retained earnings, and it is basically the extra funding which company has, which company wants to preserve with them, keep with them for future uses. Next, liabilities are non-current liabilities and current liabilities. Non-current liabilities are basically long-term liabilities which are going to be with the company for a period of more than 1 year. Whereas current liabilities are the short-term liabilities which company is going to repay within a period of 1 year. Under long-term liabilities, under non-current liabilities, we have first heading long-term borrowings. Long-term borrowings are the funds borrowed by the company for a period of more than 1 year. For example, it can be some bonds, it can be some capital leases, it can be some debentures. Next are the deferred tax liabilities. Deferred tax liability is a tax that is assessed or is due for the current period but has not yet been paid. It records the fact that company will in the future pay more income tax because of a transaction that took place during the current period. Deferred tax is a result of the difference in income generation between tax laws and accounting methods. One of the main reasons of deferred tax liabilities come from varying asset depreciation schedules or an installment sale receivable. Whereas the reverse of it is the deferred tax asset. I'm taking it here as only because understanding it would be a little easier. Deferred tax liability and deferred tax asset. It is an item on the balance sheet on the asset side that results from overpayment or advance payment of taxes. Okay, so other long-term liabilities. This heading comprises of all the long-term liabilities which have not been covered in the previous two. This is basically security deposits, rent deposits, or deferred credit. So these are the things which are usually covered under other long-term liabilities. Next are long-term provisions. Long-term provisions are basically the funding which is kept by the company for a period of more than a year for the expenses like gratuity, leave encashments, PF, etc. Current liabilities, as we have already discussed, these are the things which are basically these are the liabilities which company is going to pay within a period of less than 1 year. So short-term borrowings are like treasury bills, certificate of deposits, money market mutual funds. These are the liabilities which company repay within a period of less than 1 year. Next are the trade payables. Trade payables are the things on which basically bills have been created, services or goods have been received, but the payments are yet to be made. These basically comes up in a case of credit sales. Whenever you when credit purchase, whenever you are doing a credit purchase, so you will be receiving trade payables from your clients, and you will be paying it according to the due dates received. Other current liabilities would be unclaimed and unpaid dividends. Unclaimed and unpaid dividends are basically the amount which is due but either not paid by the company or not claimed by the shareholders. Current maturities of long term borrowings. We have seen there were long term borrowings which were payable for a period of after a period of more than 1 year. So these are the amounts out of the above long term borrowings which needs to be paid in this particular year. And then there are bank overdraft. We all know that bank overdraft, it is a service which banks usually give on current accounts to business organizations, and on bank overdraft, banks usually charge. They have bank overdraft charges because this facility allows the business people to withdraw funds more than the funds they have in their account. Okay, so now after this, we will start with the assets. Assets basically have been bifurcated into two categories: non current assets and current assets. Non current assets are basically the long term assets which are going to stay with the company for a period of more than 1 year, and current assets are the assets which will be converted into cash within a period of 1 year. First heading in non-current assets we can see is tangible assets. Tangible assets are the assets which we can see, feel and touch. And as we have already discussed that they are going to stay with us for a longer period of time, say 5 years, 8 years or 10 years. So do they stay the same? Does their value remains the same? Does their work strength remains the same? No. As the time passes, the more you use a particular asset, its value decreases, its working capacity decreases, and reduction in the value of tangible assets is known as depreciation. Reduction in the value of tangible assets is known as depreciation. There are various reasons for charging depreciation. Now, how we would know that how this particular asset, any asset, for that we have taken a machine, how this particular machinery is going to decrease, how we are going to charge the depreciation. For that, there are various methods. Calculation of depreciation related methods is a separate topic in itself. So we have mentioned here only two. Otherwise, there are 9 methods which come under depreciation calculation. So these methods basically help us to gradually, systematically reduce the value of that particular fixed asset in our balance sheet. And at the end, you can see salvage value, which is here shown as 0. Salvage value is basically the value which is expected by the company even when the asset is of no use to the company, right? So here it is shown as 0, but it is not always the case. Sometimes companies are able to receive something in place of salvage value. So we have been talking about depreciation. We just said that using and reusing the asset reduces its value. But in the balance sheet, there is only one exception. There is only one asset which has a value which keeps on increasing as the time passes on, which is land. Land is the only exception in tangible assets which does not calls for any depreciation. Depreciation is charged always on the building which is constructed over that land, right? So depreciation is never charged on land. Okay, next heading in non-current assets is intangible assets. Intangible assets are the assets which neither can be seen nor can be touched or felt. So, as we have just discussed, that reduction in the value of tangible assets is called depreciation, whereas reduction in the value of intangible assets is called amortization. Intangible assets can be a computer software, there can be some patents, trademarks, goodwill of the company, there can be various things. So, till now, we have discussed about two fixed assets, namely tangible assets and intangible assets. Third, we will just talk about capital work in progress. Here we can see capital work in progress. Capital work in progress is like, see, if when a company is in the construction of a factory or an office, when that construction is still continuing, it is work in progress, that building is not finished yet. Till the time that building is not finished, it will be counted under the heading capital work in progress. Okay, now we will start with the other non-current assets, investments. Non-current investments would be the long-term investments which company has made. Then long-term loans and advances. Long-term loans and advances, when they are on the asset side, it means that these are the amount of loans which company has given either to their employees or to their vendors or to their subsidiary companies. So these are the amounts which company has given. But if long-term loans and advances is shown on the liability side, it means that these are amounts which company has borrowed from other parties and they need to repay it, right? So other non-current assets are interest on fixed deposits, prepaid expenses, and other advances. When we talk about current assets, these are the current investments. Current investments are the amount which needs to be reimbursed within a period of 1 year, which will be converted into cash within a period of 1 year. Inventories, these are the amount of raw material, these are the amount of stocks lying with the company. Inventories are bifurcated into 3 categories: raw material, work in process, and finished goods. We can see the example: raw material, work in process, and finished goods. So next is trade receivables. Trade receivables are generated when the services have been provided, goods have been supplied, but the payment has not been received. Payment will be received according to the terms and conditions as laid down in the contract. The credit period which has been decided by the company, according to that, trade receivables will be converted into cash. Yes, but do all the trade receivables are converted into cash? No. Why? Because there is an element called bad debt. There must be there, and usually there are some or the other percentage of debtors which doesn't pay back to companies, considering multiple reasons. They might not have enough funds, or there might be some clashes. There are a lot of reasons due to which people doesn't pay you back. Fine. So considering these things, some companies create provisions. They are in the practice of creating provision for bad debts, considering the past experiences, the economic conditions, the customer's quality, and their collection policy. Companies usually create provisions for bad debts, which is usually 5 to 7% of the amount of trade receivables. Next are the cash and cash equivalents. These are the amounts which company has in their cash or in the bank balance. Next are the short-term loans and advances. Short-term loans and advances are the amounts owned by the company and which will be converted into cash within a period of less than 1 year, right? So when we are finishing with the balance sheet, there are various parameters, there are various assumptions which are considered while framing the balance sheet. Now, from where we will get to know about it? If you see the balance sheet in online form, whether it is on Bloomberg, whether it is on, say, Yahoo Finance, you will not get to know about it, because there you're going to see only the balance sheet. These notes and schedules, these extra information is available in the notes and schedules, and majorly you can access to it through the annual report of the company. because understanding the balance sheet, reading it the way they have framed it, definitely needs you to understand and know about the notes and schedules which are attached with the balance sheet, so that you understand these documents, so that you understand these numbers and these tables in the sense they are intended to, right? So what are the guidelines for interpretation of a comparative balance sheet? First would be current financial position and company's liquidity position. See the working capital in both the years. In both the years, both the years means the years which you are comparing. Working capital, as we know, is the excess of current assets over current liabilities. So you consider the net working capital. Increase in working capital will mean that there is improvement in the current financial position of the company. After that, there are long-term financial position. So to know about a company's long-term financial position, study the changes in fixed assets, long-term liabilities and capital. And the best policy would be to finance your fixed assets by raising long-term funds, by long-term borrowings. And if we want to know about the profitability of the company, the study of increase or decrease in retained earnings in various reserves and surplus will enable us to see and understand whether the profitability of the company has improved or not. Reason being, see, because all these parameters, retained earnings, reserves, surplus, have the amount which company has in excess of profit, right? Whenever you keep something out of your profit, is the retained earnings, goes to your reserves, goes to your surplus. If your profits are increasing, only then these 3 4 categories of funding would be increasing. If your profits are decreasing, definitely your reserves are not going to increase, your retained earnings are not going to increase. If you have funds coming out from the profits, only then your retained earnings, your reserves and surpluses would be increasing. Okay, so next we will be taking income statement. Any questions if you have? Okay, you can write in chat. Meanwhile, we'll start with income statement. Income statement basically has only two categories to discuss: income and expenses. Income, in incomes we see first category as revenue from operations. Here it means that revenue received by the company from its core operations, the core business area from which company, for which company works, right? Whatever income you receive from the core area comes under revenue from operations. Then there are some other incomes which company receives, like if company has sold some part of its asset, some official, some machinery it has sold, some property it has sold. So these all are the other incomes which company has received. In expenses, there are some operating and direct expenses. These are the expenses which are directly associated with your production process. Next are the employee benefit expenses. These are the benefits given by the company to its employees, like health insurance, paid leaves, sick leaves, life insurance, and so on. So these are the expenses which company is incurring for its employees. Next is the finance cost. Finance cost basically talks about the interest which you need to pay on your loans. Whatever funding you have, whatever external fundings you have, whatever charges you pay on them comes under the category of finance cost. What all cost a company is bearing over the external financing is known as finance cost. आपके जितने whatever long term borrowings you have, whatever interest you are paying on them is known as finance cost. Next is depreciation and amortization expenses. We have already discussed. Depreciation is the reduction in value of tangible assets, whereas amortization is on intangible assets. Other expenses calls for warranty expenses, traveling expenses, power and fuel expenses, and repairing cost of the machines. So when we add up all these expenses, we get total expenses, and out of total revenue, when total expenses are deducted, we get profit or loss before tax. We call it earning before tax. We call it profit before tax. We call it PBT. We call it EBT, right? And from this profit and loss, when we deduct the taxes, we get profit after tax. We get profit after tax. So this was about the income statement. Next segment will talk about cash flow statement, which is also known as sources and uses statement. Cash flow statement basically talks about only three activities, although these three activities comprises of everything what is happening in the organization, right? So it talks about these three activities: operating activities, investing activities, and financing activities. Operating activities are the principal revenue generating activities. These are the main, this is the core area of the business, what they are into, what kind of business they are into. And it includes sale of goods and services, payment to suppliers, payment to employees, and factory expenses. Investing activities basically involves the acquisition and disposal of fixed assets and investments. It includes sale of fixed assets, purchase of fixed assets, sale of investment, purchase of investment, interest or dividend received. And financing activities calls for changes in the capitals and the borrowings of the company. It is like issue of shares, issue of debentures, and redemption of shares as well as redemption of debentures. So this is the format. We were talking about these three activities, and this is the presentation how these three activities are clubbed, combined, and presented in the form of cash flow statement. First, we will talk about cash flow from operating activities. This segment basically talks about all the incomes and expenses related to operations of the company. So here, when we talk about net income, usually people think that net income is the final thing, and if net income is high, you can understand that there is a good cash flow. No, net income is not the indicator of cash flows. Net income is the indicator of only revenues generated within the company. So there is a difference in the revenues generated and the net income, right? And the cash flows. So what we need to do is we need to add back the non-cash expenses. For example, depreciation and amortization. What was the treatment given to them in the income statement? They were deducted. Depreciation and amortizations are the negative values. They are deducted from the gross profit. But actually, we don't pay any cash for them. No cash is spent by the company for depreciation and amortization. So this is a non-cash expense. So this will be added back to net income. Then there are some unrealized gain on marketable securities. There are some incomes which are yet to be received but have been entered in your income statement. So a cash which has not been received but entered needs to be deducted. The numbers which are written in the parenthesis indicates a negative value. So unrealized gain on marketable securities needs to be deducted. And then see net increase or decrease in receivables, inventories, prepaids, and payables. These are basically the cash flow from changes in operating assets and liabilities. How do we get it? We have assets and liabilities. In asset segment, if we see that a particular asset is increasing, it indicates that you have spent your cash, which will result in decrease in cash. I will repeat. In the asset segment, if you see that some current asset has increased in its value over the year, it means that you did the expenditure on that particular segment of current asset, which shows that your cash has been reduced. For example, you can see in accounts receivable, the amount of accounts receivable has increased from 2010 to 2011. So as the amount has increased, which means there was an expense of 146, which is actually an indicator of reduction in cash. So it has been put into parenthesis. The other thing, inventory has also increased, which is also another indicator of reduction in cash. Similarly, in prepaid expenses have reduced, which means you have not done that, right? So that has actually increased your cash availability. Similarly, when we come to liabilities, if accounts payable, taxes payable, accrued expenses, if any of your liability shows an increase in the amount, it means that you have paid means your cash balance has reduced. If there is some increase in the liability, it shows that you have paid it. For example, accounts payable, the amount is 577 and it is increased by 48, which comes to 625. Accounts payable have increased. It means your liability has increased, which shows that there is increase in cash. Taxes payable 114 and then 36, which shows that you have actually paid cash equal to 78. When you have paid cash equal to 78, it means that there is reduction in your cash balance by 78 rupees, right? So this is the presentation how we take or how we interpret cash flow from operating activities. Next are the cash flows from investing activities. This includes all the inflows and outflows related to investing activities. See, company has purchased machinery, equipments. So when they have purchased, it means they have paid. They have paid means the cash balance has been reduced. Then there are some proceeds from the sale of marketable securities. When company has sold the marketable securities, it means they have received the funds. They have received the funds means the cash balance has been increased. So 22 is a positive figure and it is not in the parenthesis. So similarly, whenever company is doing some investment, means company is paying for that investment, which means that there is a reduction in the cash balance. Vice versa, if company is receiving some cash from some investments like sale of some securities, it means it is leading to an increase in the cash balance of the company. Next are the cash flows from financing activities. Whenever you are going for some financing activities, if company is receiving a loan means increase in the cash balance. But if you are repaying some borrowings, which means there is reduction. So here also we can see repayment of short term borrowings has been put into parenthesis, which means by repaying the loan, your cash balance has been reduced. So this is the presentation, and finally what we do is we add up all the three activities: operating activities, investing activities and financing activities, and finally the net amount we receive. We do consider all the signs. We take positive values as positive and we take negative values as negative. So, what we actually need to do when we want to perform an effective financial statement analysis, we need to be aware of the organization's business strategy. We need to know about their objectives. We need to read and we need to understand their annual report and other documents like articles about the organization in newspapers and business reviews. This is basically called the individual organizational factors. We need to understand about the individual company, how the company is performing. Then we need to understand about the nature of the industry in which the organization works. Even if there might be a situation that company is doing really good but industry is on a downfall, government is not supporting, this kind of business is not going to help out people, this is something which is turning out to be health hazard for the people. So government is not supporting this industry, so definitely things are not going to be flashy in the long run. So you need to understand that what kind of status this particular industry has, in comparison to the organization. We need to understand that the overall state of the economy may also have an impact on the performance of the organization. Definitely, we all are seeing this. Considering this current pandemic situation, we can see how things have changed in last 5 months, how things have changed in on the economic front global front, on the industry front, and as well as individual companies fronts. So yes, definitely, if you are going to invest, if you are going to do some business in a country which is going through lots of ups and downs, then definitely your business is not going to be stable over there, right? So you need to see and understand the economic position of the country as well. Financial statement analysis is more than just crunching numbers. It involves obtaining a broader picture of the organization in order to evaluate appropriately how that organization is performing. This is something which we need to see. Now, what is the final framework for financial analysis? See, we need to know about the funding requirement of the company. We need to know the profitability of the company and the present financial condition of the company. And we also need to know what kind and which category of business risk company is exposed to. By considering all these three factors, financial manager needs to assess the company, and then accordingly he or she can negotiate with the capital suppliers. See, as an entrepreneur, as a manager, fund should be obtained on the minimum cost possible, so that we can give our output, so that we can contribute towards the wealth maximization of the company as well as the investors. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, Dr. Pooja. Thank you for such an insightful PPTs and the presentation.
Thank
Um, um, I may I ask the participants if they have any
you.
questions?
Yes.
You can put your questions in the chat box. If you have any question, you can raise your hand with the feature that has been given to you, and or else you can write in the chat box. I'll read it out for you, for everyone. I think, ma'am, everything was very well elaborated, and it made concepts clear to everyone. So, so let's move ahead with the next session for the day. So, thank you so much, Dr. Pooja.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now it gives me immense pleasure to introduce our second speaker for today's session, that is Dr. Vikas Gupta. Dr. Vikas Gupta is a doctorate in Commerce and Business Administration from CCS University, Meerut. He is a member of ICAI Delhi. He has over 20 years of experience in academics. His interest area is finance and accounts, and presently he is an associate professor at Geeta Rattan International Business School, Delhi. He has presented and published various research papers in national and international conferences and journals. Under his guidance, 2 PhD have been awarded, and also he has chaired various technical sessions. In past, he has conducted management development programs on finance for non-finance executives for various industries. We welcome you, sir. I would request you to please take the session forward.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, to me you are clearly audible.
Okay. So in the last session, which we all are seeing about the financial statement analysis. Okay. So Dr. Pooja wonderfully covered the topic, say why financial statement analysis is required, then standards of comparison, sources of information, then types of financial statement, heads of assets and liabilities, different heads of assets and liabilities she discussed, then guidelines for interpretation for comparative balance sheet, income statement, cash flow statement, effective financial statement analysis, and finally the framework for financial analysis. So she covered wonderfully. these topics. Now it is my responsibility to give some brief on financial analysis. Okay, so I am sharing my screen. I hope it is visible.
Yes, sir, it is.
Is it okay, ma'am?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, fine. So coming to the session 2 of day 1 on this management development program for finance for business professionals. Coming to this quote made by D. Morrison. So we will start this analysis of financial statement with this quote. Ratios are tools and their value is limited when used alone. The more tools used, the better the analysis. For example, you can't use the same golf club for every shot and expect to be a good golfer. The more you practice with each club, however, the better able you will be to gauge which club to use on one shot. So too, we need to be skilled with the financial tools we use. So there is an indication in this quote that whenever we are going into this analysis part, analysis of financial statements, so we cannot rely only one tools and techniques. So it means we have to use more tools for the better analysis of our financial statements. Now coming to the objectives of analysis, as we know about financial statements, so in case of balance sheet, profit and loss account, trading account, cash flow statements, so these statements provide insight into the company's current status, and it also lead to the development of policies and strategies for the future. So based upon the current situation of the organization, what is the current year profit, what is the total assets and liabilities of the organization, so based on these, company can decide policies and strategies for the future. Some objectives are there, and these objectives will vary according to the users of the statement. Okay, so perspective of the financial statement user, then specific questions that are addressed by the analysis, and identity of the user helps define what information is needed. So based upon these objectives, an analyst has to work. Okay, what is the requirement of the users? We can see so many users, say creditors are there, investors are there, management, okay, employees. So in each and every direction, analyst has to work on this part. Coming to the first user, which we can see creditors. So a creditor is ultimately concerned with the ability of an existing or prospective borrower to make interest and principal payments on borrowed funds. Some questions raised in a credit analysis should include, say, what is the borrowing cost? So a creditor may ask this question, what is the borrowing cost? What is the firm's capital structure at present? So we can see with the help of financial statement, what is the firm's capital structure and why company is asking more money? What is the borrowing cost? And what will be the source of debt repayment? So it is another question. So as a financial analyst, we have to give answers all these questions. So this is one of the user, creditor. Another one is investors. If we talk about investors, so investor attempts to arrive at an estimation of a company's future earnings stream in order to attach a value to the securities being considered for purchase or liquidation. So now some questions comes out. What is the company's performance record? Investors can ask. What are the future expectations? How much risk is inherent in the existing capital structure? So with the help of leverage or some other parameters, we can see how much risk is inherent in the existing capital structure. What is the combination of debt and equity mix? We can see. What are expected returns? What we are going to see in future? How much profit is available? What is firm's competitive position based upon the market situation, based upon the competitors in the market? We can evaluate what is firm's competitive position. So this is about the investors. Investors may ask these questions at the time of investment. Now, on the perspective of management, definitely management plays a very important role. So it is necessary to give all the answers to the management. So management relates to all questions raised by creditors and investors. Along with management must also consider its employees, the general public, regulators, etc. So as an analyst, we have to give the information to the management. How well has the firm performed and why? What operating areas have contributed to success and which have not? What are strengths and weaknesses of the company's financial position? What changes should be implemented to improve future performance? So as a financial analyst, when we are going to evaluate our financial statement, so it is necessary to give the answers of all these questions. Whether a creditor is asking the questions or an investor is asking or regulators are asking questions and management. So management prepares financial statement. Analysts should be alert to potential for management to influence reporting to make data more appealing to creditors, investors, and other users. It may be helpful to supplement analysis with other material in the annual report and other sources of information apart from the annual report. So as in the last presentation, we were seeing sources of information. So different sources are there from where we can get the data, and after that, we can analyze. We have to analyze for the purpose of management, for the purpose of creditors, for the purpose of investors, etc. So from different sources, we are collecting information. Using financial analysis tools. So in this, we are seeing analysis goes beyond collecting data and computing numbers. If we see, effective analysis encompasses both computation and interpretation. So it is required to give effective analysis for both of the purpose, for both computation as well as interpretation. A well-reasoned analysis differs from a mere compilation of various pieces of information by integrating the data collected into a cohesive whole. Then, analysis of past performance. It is important. Analysis of past performance, for example, should address not only what happened, but also why it happened and whether it advanced the company's strategy. We need to know. So some of the questions as we are seeing in this slide, what aspects of performance are critical to successfully competing in the industry? Then, how well did the company's performance meet these critical aspects? So we can establish through computation and comparison with appropriate benchmarks, such as the company's own historical performance or competitors' performance. So with this, we can see the performance, company's performance, whether company is meeting out these critical aspects or not. And what were the key causes of this performance? And how does this performance reflect the company's strategy? Because on the basis of current situation, organization is going to plan policies and strategies for future. So if we are evaluating or analyzing things properly, then only we can make plan or good plan for the future. Now, coming to the tools and techniques which we commonly used while analyzing financial statements. So common size financial statements, key financial ratios, trend analysis, structural analysis, industry comparisons, common sense and judgment. So based on these tools and techniques, an analyst analyze the financial statement and give suggestions or inputs to the management for future purpose. Now coming to the financial analysis, so here one of the definition we are seeing in this slide, financial analysis is a process of selecting, evaluating and interpreting financial data along with other pertinent information in order to formulate an assessment of a company's present and future financial condition and performance. So in this image where you are seeing three different dimensions are there. One is called market data, second is called economic data, and third one is financial disclosures. So from different sources, we are collecting information, whether it is related to market, whether or it is related to economy, or from financial disclosures. Say your balance sheet, income statements, cash flow statements. Okay, and after that, we are seeing there is an outcome. Outcome is in the form of financial analysis. So it is a process of selecting, evaluating, interpreting all the informations. When we are going into this financial statement analysis, some limitations are there. And limitations are, we can see if one company values its inventory using the LIFO method and other uses the average cost method, then direct comparison of financial data such as inventory valuation and cost of goods sold may be misleading. So these types of limitations we have to face. Even with this limitation in mind, comparing financial ratios with other companies or industry averages can provide useful insights. So this is another dimension. Okay, with this limitation in mind, if we compare financial ratios with other companies or industry averages, it can provide useful insights. Some limitations of financial statement analysis. In addition to ratios, other sources of data should also be considered, such as industry trends, technological changes, changes in consumer taste, changes in broad economic factors, and changes within the company itself. So analysts should look beyond the ratios always. So we can focus on industry trends, we can focus on these changes within the company, we can see the consumer preferences, then economic factors, technological changes, etc. Now coming to the first accounting tools, which is financial statement analysis tool, which is common size analysis. So common size analysis is a restatement of financial statement information in a standardized form. Horizontal common size analysis. So first one is horizontal, which uses the amounts in accounts in a specified year as the base, and subsequent years amounts are stated as a percentage of the base value. We will explain with the help of a case in the next slides. So what is common size and how do we present? Useful when comparing growth of different accounts over time. So this is the first part, and second one is your vertical common size analysis. which we uses the aggregate value in a financial statement for a given year as the base, and each account's amount is restated as a percentage of the aggregate. So for balance sheet, aggregate amount is total asset, and for income statement, aggregate amount is revenues or sales. So we convert the values in this vertical comma size analysis using the aggregate value. So coming to the horizontal analysis, there is a case that we are going to discuss. The following slides illustrate a horizontal analysis of AB corporations on December 31st for 2018 and 17, comparative balance sheets and comparative income statements. Now you can see. So in the last presentation, we were seeing income statement, profit and loss account, balance sheet, cash flow statement. So here you can see one of the example, one of the case of AB Corporation. And in this, we are seeing balance sheet on 31st December 2017 and 18. So current assets as well as fixed assets we are seeing here. 2017 values and 2018. Now, two more columns are there. One is for amount and another one is showing percentage. So amount as well as percentage, we are going to calculate in terms of increase and decrease. Why we are saying increase and decrease? Because we are going to compare with the base year, and here we are seeing 2 years informations are given. One is for 2017 and another one is for 2018. So if we see whether there is an increase or decrease, so what we do, there is a formula. There is a formula to calculate the change in amounts. So current year figure minus base year figure. Current year figure minus base year figure. So the amounts for 2017 become the base year figure in this example, in this case study. Now for calculating percentage, so another formula we are seeing here, calculating change as a percentage equals to change. Change means the difference, whether positive or negative, divided by base year figure. And in this case, we are seeing 2017 values are base year multiplied by 100 for percentage. So now in the next slide, we can see for cash, first asset, cash, 12,000 in the year 2018, and it was 23,500 in the year 2017. Okay, so first we are calculating the difference. Current year minus base year. Current year minus base year. We are required to calculate differences in this direction. So 11,500 in brackets. In accounting, if values are showing in brackets, so it indicates there is a negative value. There is a negative value. So 11,500 and percentage, here you can see 11,500 is the difference amount divided by the base year figure, and base year figure is 23,500. It comes 48.9%. Okay, so whatever information is given in the balance sheet, say, because here we are mentioning hardly 3 or 4 current assets and 3 fixed assets. We can see more than that in the balance sheet. So we calculate increase and decrease in amount like this, and percentage of increase and decrease. So here cash is decreasing by 48.9%. Now, coming to the next. So in this slide, you are seeing the entire calculation for this balance sheet. So 20,000 we are seeing as increase in accounts receivable, then 20,000 in case of inventory, negative decrease in inventory, increase in prepaid expenses by 1,800. In case of land, there is no appreciation. Okay, building and equipments, there is a 35,000 increase in the amount. So that is there. And now percentage, 48.9% decrease in cash, 50% increase in accounts receivable, 20% decrease in inventories, 150% increase in prepaid expenses, like this. So we can calculate, we can prepare comparative balance sheet, and on the basis of that, we can take the decision. Now, same we are applying on income statement. So some informations you are seeing for the year 17 and 18 in terms of sales, cost of goods sold, gross margin, operating expenses, net operating income, interest, like this. So the same formula we are applying for comparative income statements. So 5,20,000 sales in the year 2018 and 4,80,000 sales in the year 2017. So there is a increase by 40,000 rupees. Same for cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold also increased by 45,000 rupees. Then in percentage, sales is increased by 8.3%, and another side which we are seeing, cost of goods sold is also increasing by 14.3%. So can we see sale is increased by 8.3%, but with this sale, net income is decreasing by 21.9%. So is it a right situation for the organization? We need to analyze what is the reason behind it. Sale is increasing, but ultimately income is decreasing. So we need to check. Sales increased by 8.3% and net income decreased by 21.9%. What is the reason? So we need to check. We need to find out and give right information to the management to take necessary steps for future. So here we can see there were increases in both cost of goods sold by 14.3%. as well as in operating expenses. And it is affecting on net income. These increased costs more than offset the increase in sales, yielding an overall decrease in net income. So with this, we can get the information. Yes, sales is increasing, but only on the basis of sales, we cannot take the decision. We need to analyze other aspects also. Here, cost of goods sold is increasing. Other operating expenses are increasing. So with this, your net income is going down by 21.9%. Okay, so this is about your horizontal analysis, where we are preparing comparative balance sheet and income statement with the help of formula, increase and decrease in amount using base year, and increase and decrease in percentage. And after that, we are giving information, we are compiling the information and share it with the management. This is your horizontal analysis. Now, coming to the next, which is trend percentages. This is the second tools for financial statement analysis, which we commonly used, trend percentage. Here, two diagrams you are seeing. One in one, there is an upward trend, and in the other one, you are seeing downward trend. So trend percentages state several years financial data in terms of a base year which equals 100%. We can calculate with this formula, with the help of this formula. Trend percentage equals to current year amount divided by base year amount into 100. So with this trend analysis, we see the direction. Now, with one case, we will try to discuss. So look at the income information for AB Corporation for the years 2001 through 2005. So 5 years informations we are having in this case. We will do a trend analysis on these amounts to see what we can learn about the company. Now first see the information. So income informations are given for the years ended 31st December, starting from 2001 to 2005. Sales, cost of goods sold, and gross margin. So for trend analysis, in this question, we are seeing the base year is 2001 and its amounts will equal 100%. And what is the formula to calculate trend percentage? Current year divided by base year into 100. In the last slide, we discussed the formula current year amount divided by base year amount into 100%. So now we are going to apply on these values. Here you can see. So for sales, it is 105% as compared to 2001. Cost of goods sold is also increased and now it is 104% and gross margin is 108%. So sale is increasing, cost of goods sold is increasing and gross margin is also increasing. But we cannot take decision only on the basis of 2002. We have to check what was the past performance. Last 5 year informations are given, so we need to check. So here we are having the complete table. For sales, here you can see 105% in 2002, then 116%, 129%, 145%. So sale is continuously increasing. On the other side, cost of goods sold 104%, 118%, 132%, 150%. It is also increasing. And gross margin 108%, 112%, 124%, 135%. So by analyzing the trends for AB Corporation, we can see that cost of goods sold is increasing faster than sales. Okay, now we can compare. From 2001 to 2005, sale is increased by 45% in all, while cost of goods sold increased by 50%. Okay, so it is affecting on the profitability of the organization. If cost is increasing continuously, so it is affecting the profitability of the organization. I hope, am I clear to all? Okay. Coming to the next, with the help of a graph, we can see the trend analysis. So we can use the trend percentage to construct a graph. So we can see the trend over time. So with the help of the graph, we can also see the trend analysis. Starting from 2001 to 2005, red line is indicating sales value, blue line is indicating cost of goods sold, and black line is indicating gross margin. Now, coming to the third tool called common size statements. Vertical analysis focuses on the relationships among financial statement items at a given point in time. A common size financial statement is a vertical analysis in which each financial statement item is expressed as a percentage. So horizontal analysis we discussed, then trade analysis we discussed, now vertical analysis. So in income statements, all items are usually expressed as a percentage of sales. So in horizontal analysis, we did that, we calculated the difference. We calculate the difference. But here in income as well as in balance sheet, we calculate the percentage. So in income statement, all items are usually expressed as a percentage of sales. While in case of balance sheet, all items are usually expressed as a percentage of total assets. Gross margin percentage. Gross margin percentage equals to gross margin divided by sales. This measures indicates how much of each sales is left after deducting the cost of goods sold to cover expenses and provide a profit. How do we check? Now, see this example. One of the company is Wendy's and another one is McDonald's. And here we are seeing net income for both of the companies. For Wendy's, we are seeing $219 million. And for McDonald's, it is $893 million. Can we compare? In this example, in 2002, Wendy's net income was $219 million, whereas McDonald's was $893 million. This comparison is misleading because of the different sizes of the two companies. So we need to know about the size of the organization from where we are comparing. So if we are comparing, it is necessary that both of the companies or other companies are on the same platform. Wendy's net income as a percent of sales was about 8% and McDonald's was about 5.80%. In this light, McDonald's performance does not compare favorably with Wendy's. Okay, that's why common size financial statements are particularly useful when comparing data from different companies. With a case, we will discuss. So there is a case, another information from the comparative income statement of AB Corporation for 2018 and 17. So here we can see comparative income statement. Sales, cost of goods sold, gross margin, some informations are given for both of the years. And now sales is usually the base and is expressed as 100%. So here you are seeing in two more columns in the year 2018 and 2017, 100%. So in case of income statement, sale is expressed as 100%, and in case of balance sheet, total assets. Always remember. Now, coming to the calculation, how do we calculate? So for cost of goods sold, 3,60,000 for the year 2018 divided by 5,20,000 into 100. So it comes 69.2%. And for the year 2017, 3,15,000 divided by 4,80,000. So easily we can calculate the value in percentage. So this is called your common size percentage. So this is the first one, cost of goods sold. On the same way, we can calculate all other values like this. So in all the situation, in all the heads, sale is the base value, 100%. Sale is the base figure. So with this, we can easily calculate common size statement for income statement as well as balance sheet. So if balance sheet is given, we can apply this formula, this system to prepare a common size statement also. Okay. Now we are coming to the next tools for financial statement analysis, which is called ratio analysis. Okay, so ratios are an analyst microscope. They allow us get a better view of the firm's financial health than just looking at the raw financial statements. Ratios are useful both to internal and external analysts of the firm. How do we see? For internal purpose, ratios can be useful in planning for the future, setting goals, and evaluating the performance of managers. So internally, we can use ratios for these purposes. It is for future purpose, for setting some goals, for setting some standards, for evaluating, and as well as the performance check. Now, external purpose. External analysts use ratios to decide whether to grant credit, to monitor financial performance, to forecast financial performance, and to decide whether to invest in the company. Whether to invest in the company or not. So, ratios are helpful for internal as well as for external purposes. Objectives of ratio analysis. So some of the objectives we are seeing is standardize financial information for comparisons, evaluate current operations, compare performance with past performance. So these objectives are helpful for analyzing, for controlling, and for improving a firm's operations. It also helps to ascertain a company's ability to pay its debts. So if we follow these objectives of ratio analysis, so we can give reply to managers, to credit analysts, to stock analysts, etc. We can determine a company's efficiency, risk, and growth potential also with these ratios. So we can compare performance against other firms. We can study the efficiency of the operations, study the risk of operations, etc. Now, coming to the ratio analysis, here we classified ratios into 5 ways: liquidity, investment, shareholders, then gearing ratios, profitability ratio, financial ratios. So what about liquidity position? It indicates the ability of the firm to pay its way. How do we calculate? That we will discuss in the coming slides. So investment shareholders. Now the second type, for informations to enable decisions to be made on the extent of the risk and the earning potential of a business investment. Third type of ratio called gearing ratio, which give information on the relationship between the exposure of the business to loans as opposed to share capital. Profitability ratios give direction, give an insight how effective the firm is at generating profits, given sales and or its capital assets. And if we talk about financial ratios, then it gives an insight into the rate at which the company sells its stock and the efficiency with which it uses its assets. Okay, so one to one we are going to discuss now. Coming to the first one called liquidity. So with the help of liquidity, we see the solvency position. How solvent is the business? So majorly 2 ratios we calculate in this: asset test and current ratio. How do we calculate? Quick ratio or asset test ratio like this. So current assets minus stock divided by liabilities. We can apply the values here, and here we can see 1:1 seen as ideal for this ratio. This is for your quick ratio. And second is your current ratio, current assets divided by current liabilities. And ideal ratio is 1.5:1. So this is your liquidity ratio. Majorly two ratios we calculate, quick as well as current ratio. Now, coming to the next, which is called investment and shareholders. So it gives a direction for the investors. Earnings per share, dividend yield, what is the extent of the risk, what is the likely return on the investment. So with this ratio, we can give information, we can give say calculations or share these informations to the users. Users means in case of investors, they are the users. So earning per share, we can calculate like this: profit after tax divided by number of shares. PE ratio, price earning ratio, market price divided by earning per share. So these are the formulas. The higher the better generally for the company. Comparison with other firms helps to identify value placed on the market of the business. So we can compare with other firms. What is the price earning ratio of company A, company B, company C, and now we can compare it with our company. Dividend yield. Formula is there, ordinary share, dividend divided by market price. And again, higher the better. It relates the return on the investment to the share price. So this is about your investment and shareholders ratios. Now, coming to the gearing. It gives information about the financial position in terms of loans, in terms of capital, in terms of capital structure of the organization, like this. So there is a high gearing if we see loans are greater than the capital. So how do we calculate? Gearing ratio equals to long-term loans divided by capital employed. The higher the ratio, the more the business is exposed to interest rate fluctuations and to having to pay back interest and loans before being able to reinvest earnings. This is about gearing. Then coming to the profitability. This is the fourth category. With this, we can see profit in relation to sales, profit margins, returns on capital. In profitability ratio, we can see. So profitability measures look at how much profit the firm generates from sales or from its capital assets. Different measures of profit, say gross or net, we need to check. So gross profit effectively total revenue minus variable cost, called cost of sales. The higher the better again. If it is higher, then it is good for the organization. Net profit, effectively total revenue minus variable cost and fixed cost. So keeping control over fixed cost is important. Otherwise, organization will lose its profitability. And then return on capital employed is equals to profit divided by capital employed. So return we are calculating on capital. The higher the better. It shows how effective the firm is in using its capital to generate profit. Okay. So this is about your profitability. Now coming to the last category, which is called financial, and in which we calculate asset turnover, different turnover ratios we calculate. Asset turnover, stock turnover ratios, debtors days, debtors velocity, like this. So turnover ratios, we can see asset turnover ratio equals to sales turnover divided by assets employed. using assets to generate profit, and asset turnover into net profit margin equals to return on capital employed. Stock turnover ratio, cost of goods sold divided by average stock. Debtors days, debtors velocity we are calculating here. So debtors, average debtors including your debtors and bills receivables divided by sales into number of days in a year. So here you can see shorter the better. What does it mean? We are seeing how much time we are giving to the credit debtors. What is the credit policy? How much credit period we allow to debtors? So shorter the better. Now, coming to the next one, relating the ratios. Now we are relating the ratios. It is called the DuPont system. Helpful to complete the evaluation of a firm by considering the interrelationship among the individual ratios. Looks at how the various pieces of financial measurement work together to produce an overall return. And it also helps analysts see how the firm's decisions and activities over the course of an accounting period interact to produce overall return to shareholders. So in this DuPont system, we are relating the ratios. We are seeing the interrelationship among the individual ratios. How do we do? So we do like this. The summary ratios used are the following. Suppose one of the net profit margin we calculated, then total asset turnover we calculated. So now with this, we can calculate return on investment. So there is a relationship, interrelationship. Return on investment and financial leverage, if we calculate, then we can easily see the relationship in terms of return on equity. So net income divided by stockholder equity. So with this DuPont system, we are in a position to see the interrelationship among the ratios. Now, the first three ratios reveal that return on investment is a product of the net profit margin and the total asset turnover. The second three ratios show how the return on equity is the product of return on investment and financial leverage. So with this, we can analyze. With these two indications, we can analyze about the net profit margin, about the total asset turnover ratio, or return on investment, or return on equity. By reviewing this series of relationships, the analyst can identify strengths and weaknesses, as well as trace potential causes of problems in the overall financial condition and performance of the firm. Analyst can evaluate changes in condition and performance. Evaluation can then focus on specific areas contributing to changes. So now, as an analyst, we can review this series of relationships. We can identify strengths and weaknesses. We can also evaluate changes in the performance and give inputs to the management. Yes, these are the strengths and weaknesses. We can give the information. Now coming to the next slide, cautionary points. Before looking at the ratios, there are a number of cautionary points concerning their use that need to be identified. What are those? The dates and duration of the financial statements being compared should be the same. It is necessary. If not, the effects of seasonality may cause wrong conclusions to be drawn. The accounts to be compared should have been prepared on the same basis. Different treatment of stocks or depreciation or assets valuation will distort the results. This is another cautionary point. And in order to judge the overall performance of the firm, a group of ratios as opposed to just one or two should be used. In order to identify trends, at least 3 years of ratios are normally required. So it means we have to calculate 3 different years ratios, 3 years ratios. Say 2017, 18, 19. So it is required. Using financial analysis tools, not every ratio is relevant in every situation. Some ratios are irrelevant for certain companies. For example, inventory turnover and days of inventories on hand are irrelevant to a company with no inventory. That's why we are saying some ratios are irrelevant. For example, financial services firms or internet firms, they are having no inventory. Some ratios are redundant. Inventory turnover and days of inventory on hand tell you exactly the same thing. The two ratios are mechanically related. So if suppose a firm A has higher inventory turnover than firm B, it follows as a mathematical fact that firm A will have lower days of inventory on hand than firm B. And you do not need to present or discuss both ratios. So some ratios are redundant. Industry-specific ratios can be as important as general financial ratios. For example, the hotel industry tracks. So we can calculate occupancy based upon rooms sold divided by rooms available. Then average daily rate we can calculate. Total rooms revenue divided by number of rooms sold. So industry-specific ratios can be as important. So we were discussing about general ratios. Now we can go with industry-specific. As we took the example of hotel industry, so occupancy, average daily rate, revenue per available room, we can calculate. Different users and questions will focus on different ratios. So the focus of creditors is on solvency ratios. For investors, the focus is on market ratios called price earning ratios, etc. Different sources categorize some ratios differently and include different ratios. Sources include, say, textbooks, commercially available databases, etc. For some ratios, there is a little difference. For example, the current ratio is probably universally defined as current assets divided by current liabilities and viewed as an indicator of liquidity. Okay, and we calculated one more ratio in this acid test ratio or liquid ratio. For other ratios, differences in categorization. For example, cash conversion cycle. Okay, so it is categorized. So differences in categorization is categorized as a measure of liquidity, but it's clearly closely related to measures categorized as measures of efficiency. Okay, so different sources include different ratios, different accounting standards can result in different reported financials. So with different accounting standards, we set or we can limit the comparability of the ratios. Summary of analysis. So this is the last slide. Analysis of any firm's financial statements consists of a mixture of steps and pieces that interrelate and affect each other. No one part of the analysis should be interpreted in isolation. The last step of analysis is to integrate the separate pieces into a whole, leading to conclusions about the business enterprises. So I hope I am clear to all. So now you can ask questions.
Thank you, sir. I would request participants to ask questions if they have any. You can also raise your hand if you want to directly interact or if you want to speak up to the resource person.
So I think no one.
Yes, sir. So no questions so far. Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us with the analysis part of financial data. It made our concepts clear and guided us on how to read in between the numbers to take important managerial decisions. So
Thank you
thank
very much. Thank you so
you,
much,
sir.
ma'am.
So I thank all the participants also for attending the session, and I hope everybody has understood in detail the financial aspect of how the managers basically take decision on the basis of financial data. So we close for the day. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to see you at our next session tomorrow, which is on 29th August at 5 p.m. sharp. Thank you so much.